we'll go ahead and get started. So I believe, looking through the attendees list, I believe I've had the opportunity to meet most of you, if not all of you, and even had the opportunity to work with many of you so far. But I'll just do a quick round of introductions. My name is Ben Wright. I'm the Director of Research Core Development within the Office of Sponsored Programs, and joined today by Megan Kraft, who is the Interim Director of Research Core Strategy within the Office of the Vice Chancellor for Research. And we started the Research Core Development Initiative about a year ago, well, early last year. And one of our first primary goals was to create and establish financial reporting tools for cores that provided convenient and accessible financial reporting tools so that cores could quickly and easily assess the financial health of their cores. So after a year of weekly meetings, we finally rolled out something last week, and we are here to provide, high-level information and answer your guys' questions about that. I hope that most of you had the opportunity to log in and click around and explore some of the financial reports. If you did, please feel free to ask your questions, either add those to the chat or you can save them to the end. We're hoping to get through kind of the formal presentation piece of this very quickly in about 20 or 30 minutes, and we're hoping to save at least 30 minutes at the end for your guys' questions and hopefully some of our answers. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I will say that the financial reporting tools that we have created are not set in stone. We didn't roll them out last week and then lock them up and throw away the key. We do want to hear your guys' input. If you have any suggestions or opportunities for improvement or changes that need to be made, please let us know. And we're more than willing to help explore options and changes to the financial reports so that they best suit your needs and add the most value to you guys. So whenever you have questions, opportunities for improvement, technical difficulties, anything like that, please reach out to the Research Core Development inbox, which is rcd@unc.edu. And obviously, always feel free to reach out to Megan or me as well, and we'll be happy to help. So the financial reporting tools provide expense, revenue, and balance information for each core facility individually. It also provides rate review status information on the core's total dashboard, which is something I'll get into more detail here on the following slides. Access to the financial reports is based on the core source. So a month or two ago, we sent out lists to all of the business managers responsible for the accounting side of cores and said, hey, here's the folks that are going to have access to each one of these cores. Please confirm, deny, reject, add, revise, anything like that. And we heard back from, I want to say, business managers responsible for about 60 of the cores, which means we did not hear back from anyone responsible for about 40 or 50 of the cores that are represented in the financial reports. So if you have a need for any access changes, please feel free to reach out. And again, you can email rcd@unc.edu, and we'll be happy to either get you access or remove someone's access or change access, etc. We did also release an informational FAQ document last week. It was on the original email that was sent out, and it's also available on the OSP RCD webpage. There are, I want to say, 16 or 17 questions with answers on there. We've provided directions and screenshots. So if you do have any questions or you're not sure how something works, please feel free to check out that document. If the information is not there, if you don't get the answer you need, then obviously please feel free to reach out to Megan or me or the RCD inbox, and we'll be happy to help with that as well. So I'm going to start with some very general information, and then we're going to go into a little bit more detail. Then I'm going to turn it over to Megan, who is going to go over the 5 dashboards that are available, and then we'll hop out and do a quick demo of some of the more complicated areas. And then at the end, like I said, we're hoping to save plenty of time for questions and answers. So some general information about the fields that are available in the financial reports. You have your source core, which is simply your core source and your core name. So everyone should be familiar with that. You also have your account code. So these are the individual account codes to which transactions are recorded in the accounting system. So for example, you have 512120 for SHRA on-campus salaries. You could have 441911 for external revenue. So those are the account codes that everyone is also familiar with. The new piece in Tableau that we created were account types. And what we did is we took groups of account codes and bundled them into buckets, so you can more easily see the information for the core. So for example, we have payroll and non-payroll, internal revenue, external revenue, balance carry forward, and transfers. So for example, all of the salary account codes and fringe benefit account codes are all rolled into the payroll account type. So you can sort and play with the data using the account types, as opposed to having to sort and filter through, 50 or 100 or 200 different account codes. There are also these information bubbles throughout the dashboards, and you can roll over those information bubbles to get more information about the particular data element that you're viewing on the dashboard. I mentioned that rate review information is now available via the Tableau reports. And as a little bit of background, this rate review information is going to involve the current status of your rate review. So your actual rates are not going to be available here, or there's not going to be any monetary information or anything like that. But what you will have access to is the current status of your rate review. The OSP cost analysis and compliance team are using a software called Smartsheets to help track the rate review process for all of the cores. And what we were able to do with Tableau is to tap into that. And now Smartsheets talks to Tableau, and we can get information moving back and forth between the two systems. So the rate review information is located at the bottom of the cores totals dashboard. And again, we'll jump out and show everybody this in just a moment. But the information that's displayed there is your source core, which is your core source and name, your last rate review date, which this is going to be the date that the last rate review was completed. So we've talked to a lot of cores, and the rate review is such a fun process and fun experience to go through. Some people are like, was that 2 years when I did that? Or was that 6 months ago? Or did I completely black it out and forget it ever happened? Well, now you can go to the Smartsheet information and check that last rate review, and that's going to provide the date of your last rate review. We also provide the review dates, which is the quarter and fiscal year of your next review period. For example, October through December of 2024 indicates that your rate documentation will be due to OSP by October of 2024. And of course, the OSP CAC team is going to be sending out lots of reminders and that sort of thing. This is not your only way to get that information, but it's a good way to track to see if you're curious about when your next rate review will happen. So if you are wanting to know when your next rate review will happen, there's two options here. You can check that last rate review date and add 2 years to it. That'll be a pretty close approximation. Or you can look at the review dates and look at the first month and the fiscal year that is indicated there, and that'll be when your rate review documentation is due. There is also the current status, which is the status of your current rate review. And I'll get into that in more detail on the next slide. But what that is where your rate review is in the rate review process. For those of you that are not currently going through a rate review, or not going through a rate review when you check the financial reports, that's going to be blank. So some of these fields will be blank if you're not currently going through a rate review process. So if you check it, the field's blank, don't freak out and think something's wrong. It may just be an instance where you're not currently in a rate review. The date and current status shows the last date that status was changed. So you can see how long the rate review has been in that particular status. And then the OSP cost analyst shows the email address of the OSP cost analyst that has been assigned to your rate review. So if you're wondering who you need to reach out to, who has been assigned to your rate review, you can check that OSP cost analyst field. Obviously, Megan and I are always here to help if you have any questions about that. You can also reach out to the RSC Service Center inbox email address as well. So the rate review statuses are listed here. There's 13 rate review statuses in Smartsheet. But what I've highlighted here is which status indicates that the rate review is currently waiting on the core, and which status indicates that the rate review is currently with OSP. So kind of whose court is the ball in, so to speak. So for example, if the status is review documents requested, that means that the rate review is with the core. The next action item is going to be for the core to provide documentation to the OSP cost analysis and compliance team. The ball is in the core's court. On the right-hand column here, let's say, for example, you have review documents received. Well, that means that OSP has received the rate review documents. So the next action item is on OSP CAC to review the documentations, get back to any questions with the cores. So again, the two columns here, that will be shown on your financial report on the CORE's totals dashboard. And again, we'll pop out during the demo and I'll show you exactly where that is. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Megan, who is going to go over each of the 5 dashboards that are available.
Hi, everybody. So the first one is the totals dashboard. And when I think of totals, I'm thinking of literally everything. So your revenue minus your expenses, plus your balance carry forward, plus any transfers. So the balance carry forward is for the finance people on the call, that's your troll JE that happens normally within the first couple of weeks of July, where they transfer over what your ending balance was from the year prior to the new year. So that will include that rollover. And then transfers really are if you're transferring in revenue or you're transferring out expenses. We want to take those into account as well. So this is sort of your big picture. This is as a whole, what am I looking like? The other ones are going to break down just your revenue, just your expenses. So this gives you sort of that balance that everybody always wants to know, like, what is my current balance? The filters that are at the right can be used. So that's sort of these FY, they're under the reset filters, the FY 2023, 24, and then at the very bottom, you've got fiscal years. It's going to automatically give you this year and the prior year, but you can do more if you want to do kind of a trend analysis over the last few years, or if you want to go back and specifically look at 1 year, you can unclick any of these check boxes and look at a specific year. The same with that FY drop-down box that's right next to the revenue versus expenses, sort of like the brown and the gold chart. You can do the same with fiscal years. So right now, it's giving you 2023 because 2024 isn't all data yet because, it's only 17 days in, and we know that technically July is like this weird month where some things are real and some things are fake. So we are just letting you see year end from 2023. And then the rate review information that Ben was talking about is going to be all the way at the bottom of the sheet. So you're going to scroll all the way down and there will be more information as well. So there will be some breakdowns, some tables and charts at the bottom. And then underneath that will be that rate review information. If you do have more than one core in your bucket, that source core is going to auto-populate to all first. So it's going to give you all the cores that you have access to, and then you'll have to uncheck or check whatever core you're interested in, and then it will update. So just as an FYI, if you have more than one, you're automatically going to see all of them. The next one is your revenue breakdown. So same thing, top right, source core is going to automatically give you all of them that you have access to. And then this first section is your revenue breakdown by year. So other, again, is going to be those transfer codes. and really anything that's not the 441845, which is your internal revenue code, and the 441911, which is your external revenue code. Again, you've got filters in all of these sections that you can add, remove, depending on what you want from the chart. But this is going to kind of give you a breakdown by fiscal year, kind of what you're looking at. And then this top part gives you your total revenue, again, if you have multiples or for your one core from the previous year compared to the current year, just to give you kind of an idea of where you stand. The next one is going to be your expense breakdown. That chart at the top, similar concept, expenses, previous fiscal year compared to this year. You have your total expenses by fiscal year. So everything up until 2024 is going to be that whole year. Then you have, you know, a line graph for both your total expenses for the last couple of years, and then the same with your non-payroll expenses. And then again, just like that first one, once you scroll down a little bit farther, you'll actually have this little table that will kind of have your expenses broken out a little bit more. You can also, under this account type, right above that blue reset filters, you can uncheck. So if you're just wanting to see your payroll expenses or your non-payroll expenses or any transfers, you can pull some of those out. Or even if you want to just pull out the transfers and really just look at your true expenses, you can do that as well. This does not include any expenses that are not on your 1.9 account. So again, if you have a secondary source that you use for a subsidy, which could include UCRF funds, P30 or SPOR funds, or direct grant support for some cores you're still billing directly to grants, those types of expenses are not going to show here. It's only going to be what hits your 1.9 account. The next one is financial data. So I'm a data junkie, so I like to actually be able to dig in when I want to dig in. This is where you can go to pull the actual transaction level expenses or revenue that you want. You can pull all of this out into a CSV file, create a pivot, do a specific chart around a certain type of account code if you really want to dig into your payroll or non-payroll expenses. All of those filters on the right just help you refine your data request before you pull the data out. If you have multiple cores, there can be a lot of data if you don't kind of dig down before you pull it out. And this does include your accounting date, the transaction ID, the billing information, JE information if there's one. So if you're like, I don't know what this charge is, you can go in, you can pull that information, send it to your business manager, or if you are the business manager or accountant, you can then look that up in Connect Carolina. So you can get more detail behind what that expense or revenue actually was. The last one is specifically for those that have more than one core. So this is going to give you a comparison across your cores. Remember, those first ones lump everything together. So it's either all or one. You can then kind of click the check boxes if you have two cores that you think could all be together and you want that data together. But this actually breaks it down and compares it across all the cores. So that table at the top, where those black lines are, that is actually 3 different source codes. So it'll tell you what source is each one of them. And then it'll break it down through all the big and this chart right here that you see is similar to the sort of chart that you'll see on the bottom of each one of the other reports. So this top section is your expense chart that would show up. And then the revenue would show up on the revenue report. And then this PY balance, that's your carry forward. All 3 of those then would show up on your balance, your total balance. So again, you can pick and choose if you have multiple cores and you only want to compare a couple. And you can actually choose also down here if you want to include rollover. Again, rollover is the ending balance from the prior year sort of being rolled over and lumped together so you can get that rolling balance. Kind of like your credit card statement, though it closed, you have put on or taken off more expenses. It's kind of giving you that rolling total. So if you want to just look at what are your true this year revenue and expenses, you can pull that out and just look at what's actually happened this year. So as Ben said earlier, this is not the end all be all. We know there are more things that we would like and we've heard you would like. A couple of things that we are kind of working on in the background is being able to pull in those subsidies. For those of you that have one or more, you realize how difficult it can be to juggle across all of these different ones. So we're working on a way to try to pull them all together. There are a small handful of cores on campus that actually use a project ID as their revenue code and a different project ID as their expense code. Right now, we don't have a way to pull those in, so they are not included in this. This is only 1.9 source codes. So we're working on getting them involved. Projections, so being able to project out salary, being able to project out big POs that are coming online, or revenue if you know you've got a big kind of check in the mail that you would like to show. Effort info, so for some of you who have InfoPort access and the people actually report to you, you can go on there and you can kind of get the person, their salary, the percent effort on their different funding sources. So we are working on a way to be able to pull in that effort information into Tableau. So you don't have to worry as much about if you have midline managers or you don't have access to InfoPort. You can at least get the stuff you need to do your rate reviews. If you get other funding, so you do get some direct grant funding, you can make sure that that's there as well. AR integration, I hear this, and I know Ben hears this all the time. I get told I have a bad balance, but I have a whole bunch of invoices that are coming down the pipeline that'll fix it. So we are looking at a way to be able to take more specifically with your external revenue, because your internal revenue should just hit at the end of the month, but your external revenue will be just sort of sitting out in the ether until they make that payment. So we're working on a way to bring in almost like an AR account code that when you load those invoices in initially, similar to like in my brain, the way it will hopefully work is like a pre-encumbrance, and then it'll kind of go off and then come on as revenue. That one's going to take a little bit longer because there's a lot of parts and moving pieces that have to happen. But I think that would be really helpful for everyone. And then the last one is customer information. So being able to dig into who your users were, what schools they're associated with, the type of work that you've done. For those of you that do have a SPOR or a P30 or a U that you are on and you get asked for metrics, being able to kind of have those metrics come into that space. For those that are using iLabs, a lot of that is being created in our iLab space, but for the InfoPort friends, it's not there yet. So we are working on a way to kind of get that for everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Megan.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to jump out really quick before we get to questions and go over just a few things in the system. Let me end my slideshow here. All right, perfect. All right, so I'm going to share screen again. Okay, so everybody should be able to see my screen here. This is what it looks like if you log in using the link that we provided. And I also just provided that link in the chat as well for any of you guys who did not have it. What you will see, I have like 12 different sheets here, but you should only have 5 different sheets here. And if you click on, we're going to look at this CORS totals dashboard, because as Megan said, kind of everything is there. It's kind of your one-stop shop. Once you click on that, it'll take you to this folder. There's only one selection to click, so you can click on that. I already have it open here. It does take a moment for it to load on my view because I have access to all 120 cores that are in here. You guys will only have access to your applicable cores. So you may have access to 1 core or 3, 5, 6, something like that. We'll start, as Megan alluded to, we didn't pick the best time to roll this out at the beginning of a fiscal year, because we don't have a whole lot of data for fiscal year 2024. So if you look at this revenue versus expenses chart here, it's filtered to show, it defaults to show fiscal year 2024. But as you can see, there are only 2 data points here because we're only in the first month and we've only been in fiscal year 2024 for a couple weeks now. What you can do, and most of the charts have this option, what you can do is choose which fiscal year you want to see. So instead of thinking it's broken or anything like that, just check to see if there's a fiscal year filter. And if there is, you can choose the last fiscal year, and that'll populate with last fiscal year's information there. As Megan mentioned, those fiscal year filters are on a lot of these data elements, and they can be over here on the right as well. As we've been talking about, the Smartsheets data is going to be here on your CORS totals dashboard. It's going to be at the very, very bottom. So I will take a look at, let's take a look at one of these just to show, kind of walk through these points. We need to pick a good one. So let's take a look at this one. So DEXA imaging. Don't mean to put this individual core on the spot, but it's important to talk specifics. So your last rate review was conducted February of 21. Your current review dates are July through September of 2023, which would indicate that the documentation is due July of 2023. So this core should currently be in a rate review. And you can see that because they do have a current status here. You have a date in current status, number of days in current status. This one looks a little bit bad, but we've got some things going on in the background, so it's not as bad as it looks. And then you should have an OSP cost analyst. There are 2 cases in which you will not have an OSP cost analyst. That's if the status is review documents requested, because we haven't received, the OSP team hasn't received anything from the core, or if the core is not currently in a rate review, you will not have a cost analyst assigned to you. But if you do, the email address will be here, and you'll know who to email with any questions or anything like that. Did want to point out that for any amount shown on any of the dashboards, whether it's an actual number or a data element in a chart, you can click on that amount and pull up the transactional level detail for that value. So when you click on the amount, you'll see the view data icon here. Click on that, another window will pop open, and you can click full data here. And this will give you the transactional level detail for that. You can go to the download section here, and it will download in your browser window. You can open it up from there. Quick note, it does save as a CSV file or open as a CSV file, so you'll want to make sure to save that as an Excel file. If the fields aren't, we've done a lot of work in showing the default fields that are displayed when you open the data, but if for some reason there are fields that you want to see, you can click the Show Fields button, and there is a long laundry list of the fields that you can include here. So if something isn't listed in the default data that shows up here, just use the Show Fields section to choose which fields you want to display. And then Megan also mentioned the financial data information. Mine's going to be a bit slow because this is financial data for all 120 cores. But if you get here and you would like to download the actual data that is shown here, you'll go up to this download button, select crosstab, make sure that Excel is checked, and then download that information there. that information and kind of these instructions are all shown on the FAQ document that we provided. So again, feel free to check that out. Instructions for downloading, filtering, viewing different dashboards, et cetera, are all there. So please feel free to check that out. Hopefully that'll answer a lot of the questions that will come up. I believe that's all of the things we kind of wanted to demo, just some of the more complex. We spent a lot of time, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We spent a lot of time trying to make this as user-friendly as possible, even if you're not an accountant. And also, you know, as logical as possible. So anybody can just pick these up and get the data they need without having to read an instruction manual or know how Tableau works or anything like that. Obviously, as you guys work and start using these financial reports, if there are any enhancements we can make to make it more user-friendly, or you need to see different data or data in different ways, let us know and we'll be happy to help to make those enhancements. So with that, I'm going to stop blabbing because I know we're 4 minutes over our deadline, but we'll open it up to any questions. So if you do have questions, you know, feel free to unmute yourself and ask.
Is there a way to connect your, it's great, it's very useful, it's very helpful, your data set. And the question is, can you connect it with the other part of the reporting system? So it looks like it is separate. Is there a way to use this data to help me for the next rate evaluation? Because it looks as if we are talking about two different systems. If there is a direct line in which I can connect your information to their information, this will be great, because then everything, it will save a lot of time, and I will not have to incorporate your data to somebody else's data file and stuff like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So the data that's displayed here is out of the data warehouse, which is the same data that is from Connect Carolina, and it's the same data that is shown in Infoport as well. It is updated daily, so the data may be a day behind, just like Infoport is a day behind. But the data is coming from the same source. So whatever's in Connect Carolina that feeds into Infoport, that data is feeding into these financial reports as well. In terms of your rate review documentation, the expenses that you put together to come up with your rate review information, you can use these reports for that as well. Like I said, you can go and view the transactional data. You can group by account codes. You can group by account type, and filter and group the data on however you need to come up with your estimates and your expenses for the rate review, to put your rate documentation together.
Is there a way to connect it automatically, so it will be one system, not two different systems? Because it looks like there are two systems here. Of course, I can use your data, which is great, and use it to the rate review. But if it is already was incorporated as part of the rate review, then it will save a lot of time for me and for everybody else.
Yeah, I think, you know, we're always trying to explore options to connect our systems, and we do want this Tableau report at some point in time in the future to be kind of the one-stop shop. You go here to see the status of your rate review. Smartsheets has the capability of actually building in the rate review documentation, so we could integrate that into this as well. We're building an asset database, which we want to implement and integrate into this Tableau report as well. So we're keeping a mind to that. We can't do that right now. That would be great. If you know of any ideas and how to do that, we would love to hear it and love to implement that. But we are keeping those options in mind for sure.
And just to follow up on that, Dr. Caffrey, there are some things that we probably could more easily pull from the transactions to say, like your personnel, the percent effort total. But we're not going to know from those transactions that hit how much of that effort to put towards each one of your rates. This also the same with your expenses. So your non-payroll expenses, we could, if coded properly, we could pull your equipment POs for service agreements and those types of things. But again, we wouldn't know the allocation that needed to happen. And then, you know, your just general supplies that come in. So it's going to come in as a PO from Thermo, or it's going to come in as a PO from some sort of ePro website or third-party vendor, but we don't know what's actually in, like, the transactions within that transaction to say you bought 27 pipettes, or you bought, you know, 2 cases of tips, or whatever the expense was. So I think, though, in theory, it would be a really great idea, there's still so many nuances to the data set that comes in from your general transactions that we would have to have some pretty intense AI for it to know how to categorize that. But I love the idea.
Thank you.
You can ask ChatGPT how to do it.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that the subsidies, we might not have them here. Is that correct?
We definitely don't have them here right now. In the future, we would like to integrate them.
Okay, so basically, like when we look at all these numbers, we should potentially have to go back to the group, for example, Lineberger or whatever that is giving that subsidy, but now we cannot put it in here, right? We cannot like manually put it in here, right? Okay.
The issue with the way that we currently run subsidies, for you, Ramiro, you know, you've got your CCSG and your UCRF. Those are 2 different source codes. CCSG updates and changes. Sometimes UCRF things get moved somewhere else after the fact. So there are a lot more moving parts. It's really just moving expenses off for the subsidies as they stand now, versus what we're hoping we can do is find a way to just bring the revenue over. So you would leave all your expenses, you would leave all of your other things here, so you could get a better global picture, and then somehow find a way to bring just the revenue from wherever it is in the ether of UNC to your 1.9 account. So it really is like the total package picture.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Any other questions?
Comments, concerns, suggestions?
Fun facts?
I think this is really good. I probably will reach out to you guys as I dig in a little bit more for more specific questions. But I think this was really good. Thank you for hosting this.
Yeah.
Awesome. And I will say, you know, if we're going to have, I think 3 more of these kind of more formal presentations, and then we're going to have 2 office hour sessions where Megan and I will just be here to answer any questions. Those will be coming later in August. If you poke around and play around in the system, you know, in the next week or 2, and you have questions and you'd like to discuss them live, like obviously always feel free to reach out to Megan or me. But you can also come to any of the other sessions as well and post your question there.
Yeah, one that I'm kind of interested in looking at is the projections part. I think that would be very valuable because it's so rate reviews we have to do what one every 2 years or something like that, or unless we have some major change or whatever in the core. So the question would be like, okay, well, how are we doing the projection wise? How are we going to go this year? And maybe that will tell us, oh crap, we probably should do another review, even though it's not due for another year or so.
Yeah, I think being able to bring in the user usage data will also be helpful when we can get that moving in, just because that will give you a better idea of where you're trending. Obviously you have revenue, but we know for some cores revenue lags. Some more than others it can lag. And so I think being able to bring in the AR so you know it's outstanding, so it's not just this black hole, but then also being able to look at your trends for your monthly user usage data will be helpful, because you can kind of see, oh, did we lose a faculty member, or COVID hit, or, you know, whatever is going on. That piece of equipment was down for 6 months. You can actually break it down more so to how it's broken down in iLabs.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else? Any other questions? Yeah, I see, I think Anita just emailed or messaged in the chat, and she fears that she doesn't have access. So if any of you guys run into that problem, we tried to get access set up for everybody appropriately, but I'm sure there are some people that we missed. So if you're getting an error where you don't have access or anything like that, feel free to send us an email and we'll get your access added. We can do that pretty quickly. And we'll do that if you don't have access. All right. Well, with that, if there are no more questions, we will give you guys 15 minutes back. But as we keep harping, you've heard it a lot. You know, if there are any opportunities for improvement that you guys can think about, please let us know. If there are any challenges or hurdles that you come across, or you're like, oh, I'd like to have this piece of information, let us know. And we're happy to explore options, ways to incorporate that in here. So thank you all. Thank you guys for coming. And yeah, let us know if you need anything.
Thank you very
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.